The Sox just did a really good thing, at least in my opinion. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and in the second video of today, we are breaking down the latest contract handed out by the Boston Red Sox and what it means for the 2025 season. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so the contract we are talking about today was broke just a couple of hours ago. I believe it was by Chris Cotillo. Jeff Passan also put it out as well, but I think Chris Cotillo was the first one on this news, and that is that the Red Sox have reached an agreement with their star outfielder Jarren Duran to avoid arbitration. The total dollar amount for this deal is a $3.75 million contract for this season, but it's a little bit more complicated than that because it's much more than just a regular old arbitration hearing contract, right? When we talked about Tanner Houck and Cutter Crawford, we talked about those guys getting 1-year deals, and that just simply avoids the arbitration process. With Duran, it's actually a bit more in depth because on top of getting 1 year, $3.75 million, Duran in 2025 can also earn an additional $50,000 for each of the following plate appearances: 450, 500, and 550 plate appearances. Jarren Duran had a lot of plate appearances last year. If he does the same thing this year, he's going to make an extra $150,000, which pushes this contract up to about what he was looking for in the arbitration process. Again, really good news if you are a Red Sox fan. But on top of that, it gets even more complicated because it's not just a 1-year deal that Duran gets attached to him. In fact, it could potentially be a 2-year deal because on top of $3.75 million for 25 with the extra stuff added in this contract is also a team option for 2026. Now, this team option on the surface is an $8 million deal. But again, like this year's contract, there are some incentives that could push Duran into making much more money. Now, I'm going to break it down as easy as I possibly can. Robert Murray does a great job on Twitter doing it. We're just going to go off of his tweet. According to this, the contract breaks down like this. So it's $8 million regardless of what happens if he's on the Red Sox in 2026 and the Red Sox pick up his club option. However, after the 2026 season is over, if he finishes top 20 in MVP voting, he gets another $1 million. So that contract goes up to $9 million. If it's a top 10 in MVP voting, it's $2 million. So that contract goes up to $10 million. If it's top 5, it's $3 million, $11 million. And if he wins MVP, it's $4 million. So really, this could get up to a $12 million salary for Jarren Duran if the Red Sox end up picking up this club option. Now, on top of that, if he's not in the MVP discussion, if he doesn't finish top 20 in MVP, but he's named to second team All-MLB, which is essentially at the end of the year, MLB players or executives or MLB.com, I forget who votes on it, basically votes on who were the best players at each position. You'd first all-team, second all-team. I believe Duran was second all-team this year as well. Don't quote me on that, right? I'm just kind of raw reacting to this contract in this video. But if he can get that, that's $500,000 as well. So kind of bare minimum here. If Duran has a solid year, he's making $8 million. If he has a really good year, he's probably making close to over $10 million. And if he's a MVP caliber player, he's making $12 million. And just wait, there is more. This is an unbelievably complicated contract, kind of, especially for a 1-year deal on top of the arbitration buyout. But basically, on top of that, if the Red Sox end up trading him between 25 and 26, the club option is eliminated and he gets a $100,000 buyout. So there's a ton in here to worry about, but the big thing to understand is that Jarren Duran is not only here for this year, he's here for next year as well. Now, a lot of people are going to ask the question, Corbin, what happens if the Red Sox don't pick up this option? What happens if they say, you know what, the performance wasn't what we're thinking, we don't love the idea of potentially paying you $12 million anymore, we're all set? Well, it doesn't mean the Red Sox are done with Jarren Duran. It doesn't mean that Jarren Duran becomes a free agent. In fact, it just simply means that arbitration would kick back in, and you would probably repeat the same process next year, which I really highly doubt the Red Sox are going to do. You don't make this kind of deal assuming that you are going to opt out of this contract, right? One, it'd be kind of bad faith at this point, right? But two, it would also really not save the Red Sox a ton of money here. If Jarren Duran has a season in 2026 where he's an MVP caliber player, well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be a very, very lucrative contract for the Red Sox if they're only paying him $12 million. So overall, taking a look at this deal, it's really complicated, but it kind of makes some sense for Duran, especially where he's at in age-wise. It makes sense for the Red Sox. I like the contract itself. I love the fact that the Red Sox were able to get this done, and I think that's obviously going to be my biggest takeaway. What I mean by this being my biggest takeaway is that I was really nervous that this was going to become a very big story, that the Red Sox just simply weren't going to give him anything and he was going to go to arbitration and it was going to sour relationships and all of a sudden we had a problem, right? And that's sort of doomsday thinking on my part, but I think that's what a lot of fans' initial reaction to the fact that Jarren Duran couldn't reach an agreement with the Red Sox was, because a lot of recent success or failure by the Red Sox has been sort of that doomsday thinking. It's just something we've gotten used to over the past couple of years. So you sit there and you say, why is this important for the Red Sox? One, anyone going to arbitration is just simply kind of a bad idea, right? Especially if you're haggling over less than $1 million. You're not that far apart, but you're so hell-bent on not trying to give this player anything else, any extra, going that extra mile that we talk about all the time, that you need a third party to come in and argue and try and figure out which side is right. It tends to not usually end super well in terms of a relationship with an organization. You can't do that to a guy like Jarren Duran. He was the best player on your team last year. Going into this offseason, I say this all the time. I'm going to keep saying it because it goes to show how important this team views Jarren Duran. He was labeled as a leader, a role model by Alex Cora. He was labeled a leader, a role model by this front office. These are a lot of words to use to describe this guy and then go and nickel and dime him. So thank God that didn't happen. We sat here in the original video we made about the snub of Jarren Duran, if you want to take a look at that reaction, when we found out they didn't reach an arbitration. And I said, more than likely, this isn't going to end up being a big story, right? They were going to come to some conclusion, but PR-wise, it just didn't look good. It didn't. It's flat out. You can't really argue with that. You can argue whether or not this is a big deal, but you can't argue with the optics of not being able to come to an agreement with Duran and going into arbitration. The fact that they were able to get this done, in my opinion, is a really, really fantastic thing. It's got to feel good for Duran, right? He was probably sitting there being like, what the heck? What do you mean I'm not worth $4 million? This is crazy. And even though he didn't get $4 million this year, he could end up getting a whole lot of money next year. And I kind of like the incentives in there. For Jarren Duran, a guy who's had to work for everything in this league, right? Going through failure, coming up a bit later than some other star prospects who ended up getting deals earlier than him, right? This is just more of that sort of, I'm going to put this in my bank of motivation to get me to that next level. And hopefully 2026 is the best Jarren Duran year we've ever seen. I would be kind of surprised if the Red Sox didn't pick up the option, but I can't tell you. It feels like a breath of relief. And I know that sounds dumb. I know a lot of people are going to say, Corbin, it was always going to happen. And you're probably right. But to actually have it happen is much different than trying to convince yourself it's going to happen. I also think it proves a lot of people wrong, right? We were sitting there and everyone was like, they're cheap. They're not going to do this. It's never going to happen. He's going to get traded. This is another Mookie. Well, now you don't have to worry about that. Now you don't have to worry about the idea of this being another Mookie, even though it's an entirely different situation. You don't have to worry about trying to sit there and justify why the Red Sox won't spend money on their own star players, even though they're connected to other free agents on the market still, right? You don't have to do that. I just think this does a whole lot to fans' excitement for the 2025 season, and I think it does a lot for this team and for Jarren Duran as well. So overall, entirely complicated contract, but I kind of love it. I love diving into contract details, and a breath of fresh air the Red Sox were able to get this done. Not that I fully doubted it. There was always that part of me that was like, what if they couldn't? And the fact that they did makes this a whole lot better. So let me know in the comment section down below. This was my raw reaction. I just saw the news, turned on the camera. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think of the Duran extension? What do you think of the contract itself? And what do you think it means for this Red Sox team? And do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you want to listen instead of watch these episodes, best way to do that is to head over your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.